It's the burning topic on everyone's mind. Should you purchase an electric car? Hi guys, how you doing? It's the EV Charge Guy here, and today I'm going to be talking about should you buy an electric car? So it's been a couple of weeks since I posted my last video. Apologies for that. It's simply because I've been away on holiday. I've been driving my EV in Scotland. As you can tell by my lack of tan, I've been on holiday in the rain rather than the sunshine, which is a bit sad. But other than said that, I had a great time driving my electric car. I drove it all over the place. I had to stop and charge it. So it was a great experience on learning what the best thing to do is with an electric car, where to stop, and how to gauge how long your range should be. Now, the reason I'm bringing up this should I buy an electric car is as we're moving further on through time, you might not be aware of this, but in 2030, there's no longer going to be a choice. If you want to purchase a new car from 2030 onwards, it will be electric. All the combustion engine vehicles, you'll still be able to buy them used, to be fair. However, a brand new vehicle, and I would imagine as we get closer and closer to 2030, they will start to get phased out and there'll be less and less combustion engine vehicles available. Now, from my point of view, I'm going to try and be as unbiased as possible because, as you know, I'm a complete convert in electric vehicles. I work within the industry, and I do feel that it's something which, once we get through some of the myths and debug some of the problems that people face, it's just another reason why it's much easier to accept the change that's coming. The reason I wanted to do this video in particular is because a lot of you might have a job where you get a company car, and there's a very good chance that in the next couple of weeks, months, years, that car that you get is going to be electric. So it's going to be a change for you. It's going to be very different. No more fueling, no more going to petrol stations, no more having to really put your foot down to go when you sit at a roundabout and you push the accelerator. In most cars, there's a little turbo lag, there's a little weight that you've got to. An electric vehicle, that doesn't happen. So they are very different to drive, but in a positive way. So a couple of things we should look at when we're talking about an electric car. So let's get into them. Now, obviously, the first thing to mention with an electric vehicle is they are good for the environment. And obviously, right now, hugely publicised greenhouse gases, CO2 emissions, all the things you would expect to hear from any news report at the moment. Companies trying to get to net zero, everybody's trying to do the right thing to improve our environment. Cars are one of those things that we've all got. Every household, or almost every household's got one, and in many cases, two or three. So if it's something we can stop creating emissions from, in the long run, that's going to make a huge difference. Don't get me wrong, there is the initial impact of mining the lithium and creating the cars and all the big motor manufacturers completely transforming their warehouses, their production, their manufacturing in order to create an electric car. But once that's done and out the way, it should create a more net carbon production of the vehicle. So we want to save the environment, of course we do. It's always nice to be a hero, so that's something I'm going to say is point one on my pros of an electric vehicle. Point two in electric vehicles is the price of them is coming down. Now, this is important because a lot of the haters of electric vehicles over the last couple of years have said the problem with an electric car is they'd love to get one, but they are too expensive. And to be perfectly honest, they are right. I used to work for a well-known motor manufacturer. In fact, I worked for Volkswagen, and we used to sell the Volkswagen Polo, the Volkswagen Golf, the Volkswagen Tiguan, and they were all, what would you say, upper mid-priced cars is probably a good way to describe it. You could get a Corsa for less than a Polo, you could probably get a Fiesta for less than a Polo, but they were very loyal customer base, very reliable vehicles, very, very popular. Same with the Golf, same with the Tiguan. When I worked there, that was when we made the change from combustion engine vehicles and we started to introduce the ID range to the dealership. And the first thing everybody says is, oh my God, look at the price of those. Now, that's not a huge surprise. Like I say, these motor manufacturers had to invest billions and billions and billions of pounds into changing their manufacturing process, changing where they got materials from, changing how the cars were built, creating battery technology, and particularly in Volkswagen's case, because they had their little Dieselgate scandal, it was something they wanted to reassure the customers that they were pressing ahead with doing the correct thing with production of electric vehicles. Now, with the electric vehicles, as you know, I've got a Volkswagen, so I've got an ID3, absolutely adore my car. So as I said at the start of this video, I am quite biased to the electric vehicle. I have driven other electric cars though, and the experiences you get with most of them are quite similar, which we'll go into in a moment. But the point on this is car prices are starting to get better. And one of the companies we have got to thank for this is MG. So MG you might associate with sort of small two-seater sports cars or old cars from the past, which at the time were very good, but descended into getting worse and worse and worse. They were, however, bought by a Chinese manufacturer, and they have hit the market now and primarily are providing electric vehicles to the UK market. And in the case of the MG4, which is the one I'm going to focus on, what a car it is. Now, this is an electric vehicle which starts from £25,000, or 25,995 I think it is. That car in itself costs less than a Volkswagen Golf. It's a 5-seater hatchback. It's very similar dimensions to a Golf, so it's got the space, it's got the boot capacity, it's got everything that one could need if you're thinking of switching from a mid-size hatchback into an electric mid-size hatchback. I've had a drive of this car. I like it a lot. I've seen it at lots of shows. It's the car which lots of people like to push simply because of the price point. And most importantly, what it's done is it's undercut the ID3 by about £10,000. It's earned it the nickname the Chinese Volkswagen. It's the Chinese ID3 because it looks quite similar, but like I say, the cost is, £10,000 in any. It means essentially you can put down sort of like a £2,000 deposit on a 3-year PCP, and you can get this car for less than £350 a month. Like, those are the figures, and that's quite astounding for an electric vehicle, particularly one that you own, not least it's actually your car. So it's something I would highly recommend having a look at, is that MG. It drives great. Generally speaking, if you're thinking about buying an electric car, or you're thinking about reasons not to buy an electric car, something that's very important to remember is electric cars, if you take the range conversation out of it for just a moment, just the car is better than combustion engine vehicles in lots of different ways. For instance, the power when you push the accelerator is instant. Now, I know that doesn't seem like a huge selling point, but see when you're sat at a roundabout and you've got a little space to nip out into, when you've got a combustion engine vehicle, you've got to push your accelerator down. If it's automatic, you've got to wait for the turbo light to go oomph, and then you go. What you get used to in your car, so you probably don't notice it. However, when you jump into an electric car, that changes completely. As soon as you touch that accelerator, you move. There's no waiting. And similarly, because they're all electric, because they're all automatic, which takes out the problem of should I buy a manual, should I buy an automatic. And generally speaking, if we go back to combustion engine vehicles, an automatic car costs about an extra £3,000 or £4,000 than a combustion engine one. An automatic vehicle costs roughly £3,000 more than a manual vehicle. So again, if you can figure that into the price of the electric vehicle that you're buying, it's actually getting cheaper as well. So I would highly recommend having a look at an electric vehicle. Not to 60 in less than 8 seconds for £25,000. Generally speaking, if you're purchasing a Golf, you'd probably be in like a 1 litre turbo. Your 0 to 60 would be, I can't remember what it is, but like let's say 10 or 11 seconds, maybe even longer than that. Or it'd be a 1.5, where you'd probably, again, be a little bit slower than that, but again, the price would ramp up. So again, the electric vehicle comes into its own. Not only that, as standard, electric vehicles have way more spec. They've got, generally speaking, they'll have heated steering wheels, heated seats, sat-nav, all these things that combustion engine vehicles, until very recently, didn't really have as standard, and particularly not in the entry-level model. Normally, sometimes you'll still get hubcaps in these cars, sometimes you won't get nice seats, sometimes you'll get a CD player rather than just all connectivity, you won't get Apple CarPlay. All these bits and bobs, which generally speaking come standard with electric vehicles. So I would really recommend getting an electric vehicle from the performance point of view. They're heavier than combustion engine vehicles, but again, because they've got more instant power, you don't notice that. It also means the suspension's a little bit stiffer, so they drive almost a bit more like a sports car when you're on sporty roads. When you throw them about, the suspension's stiffer, which is great. But they've also got, because generally the batteries are at the bottom of the vehicle, you've got 50-50 weight distribution as well, so you don't feel speed bumps as much. I can't recommend electric vehicles highly enough, and performance-wise, and now because of the price, that MG, like I say, that's a great price, but not only that, that's going to force everybody else to look at what they're doing, because it's going to be very difficult for the Mercedes, Audis, Volkswagens, Volvos of this world to sell a car for £20,000 more than that and justify it. So I think that car is super important for the market, and I'm sure if you've not seen them about, you'll start to see them once you watch this video, because they are everywhere, and I cannot blame people for having them. In hindsight, if I'd known it was coming out when I purchased my ID3, I probably would have got one. Okay, on to the third point where I think you should buy an electric vehicle is charging at home. Now, this is important because if you've got a combustion engine vehicle, you probably don't think about fueling. You just wait until your light comes on or you get down to a certain level, however you do it. You go to a petrol station, you fill up your car, you just kind of lose 80 to 120 pounds, whatever it may be, on charging your car, and you don't really think about it. Now that there's electric cars on the market, as an electric car owner, if I ever take my wife's car, which is still a combustion engine vehicle, if I ever take that to the petrol station, the price of doing it, and it just makes me sick. I can't believe how expensive it is, particularly when I've got myself a home charger, and I've also got, from my home charger, I've got my EV tariff at night time. So what you want to get yourself is you want to get yourself a home charger at home. This will be a little box which will go at the side of your garage, on the side of your house, something like that. Of course, you've got to have a driveway for this. I'm assuming that you do for this part. But when you do plug it into your charger, you can set it up so that it charges at certain times. Now, what you want to be doing is you want to be looking at your energy provider and finding out if they've got an EV tariff, or if not, switching to a company that does. Generally speaking, because power prices are quite high just now, your kilowatt per hour rate that you'll be getting charged from your energy supplier is going to be quite high. It's going to be 35 kilowatts up to about 45 kilowatt hour. It depends who you're with. But that is quite high. However, if you get yourself an EV charging tariff, it means from a set time at night time, you'll get a lower rate. And that's done when the grid isn't being stressed as much because everybody's sleeping, all the power's turned off. So if you get yourself a low cost tariff, let's say you go to an Octopus, for instance, or an OVO is a good example. You can get yourself a tariff from 12 o'clock at night till 5 o'clock in the morning, and your tariff goes down to about 8 pence per kilowatt. Now that makes a huge difference, a huge difference. It means that you can charge your vehicle for around £4 to £7, depending on the size of your battery. And that's going to give you 250 miles worth of range, let's say for an example, as an average, 250 miles worth of range. If you looked at your week's driving, how far are you going? If you looked at how far you travel to work, if you look at how far you go to take your kids places, you look at how far you go on your holidays even, 250 miles gets you a long way. 250 miles, to give you an example, is London to Leeds. That's in fact, that's less than 250 miles. I mean, even London to Edinburgh is only 400 miles, so there's more than half of that you could get up the country from London. And that's on an average electric car. That's like the ones I'm talking about, the MG, the ID3, all these kind of mid-level affordable kind of EVs. If you can do that, and that's only going to cost you £4 to £7, I mean, and it charges at night time. It charges whilst you're asleep. I mean, it's the best setup ever. You wake up in the morning, your car's fully charged, you've got total peace of mind. And I don't ever have to go to a petrol station, I don't have to get in the car, I don't have to get out in the rain, I don't have to go into that like new kiosk situation where you end up spending like £8 on juice and sweeties and bars of chocolate and whatever it may be. It really is fantastic. To flip the coin the other way, if you are going on a long drive, so let's say, for instance, you're driving from Edinburgh to London is a good example, you will need to stop on this journey to charge your car. If you were attempting it in one day, which you may well be, maybe it's unlikely you do it in one day, but let's say you were attempting it in one day, you would have to stop to charge. Up until very recently, you're probably going to have to stop at a 50 kilowatt charger. So that's going to take you about an hour to charge your car. Something like that, maybe a little longer. That seems like a long time to waste, particularly when you could be driving in that time and you've got a destination to go to. However, now you're getting chargers which are charging at 200 kilowatts, 300 kilowatts, 400 kilowatts. Like these chargers are getting faster and faster and faster. And the difference that's making is huge. These are becoming 25-minute stops. And that's nothing. That's popping out, that's going, stretching your legs, it's going to the toilet, it's stopping to get a cup of tea. And before you know it, you'll be back up to 70, 80, 90%. And you can really just judge whether you need the full 100% worth of charge to get that distance, which I don't think you would. I think you're probably better stopping, say, twice for 15 minutes, say, on your drive. And if you're going down the main roads, there'll be chargers at almost every stop. So it's going to be a great solution for you. So I don't think the infrastructure is that bad, and it's only getting better. The government's giving grants to almost everybody who's willing to put EV chargers in, particularly on main routes or in particularly rural areas. So once you get to your destination where you're charging, if the hotel you're staying at or the Airbnb you're staying at doesn't have an EV charger, then there will be somewhere, generally speaking, within about 7 miles of your location, which is pretty good. That needs to improve, and it will improve. But until it does, what a difference that's going to make. So to sum up this video, should you get an electric vehicle? I think you should. I am very biased, to be fair. I'm all about the EV life. I think it's great. I love my car. It makes no noise. It's really comfortable. It's got loads of technology. It charges at night time. I wake up, I'm fully charged. It gets me everywhere I need to go, like I say, within that 250 mile range, which I only really exceed sometimes. Very rarely. In fact, I can get to Manchester and and if I stay in a hotel, the hotel's going to have an EV charger. It'd be a mad hotel to not have EV charging installed in this day and age. And it is only going to get better. There's going to be more and more chargers available whenever I go. So should you get one? I think you should. As of 2030, there's not going to be a choice. So jumping on the bandwagon now is going to be good. You're also going to get in early. So I would imagine, I don't know this, but I would imagine there's going to be a market for used EVs probably toward the end of 2020. So there should be good money in an electric car as well when you come to resell it, and the prices of the new ones are only going to come down. So I think there should be a wee opportunity for you to make a wee living out of it as well, a wee margin. I do love my electric car. I love how fast it is. I love how responsive it is. It is a fantastic vehicle to own. Okay, now it's time for the cons. Should you buy an electric vehicle? Okay, so let's look at the cons. Though I've lined out that electric vehicles are getting less expensive, and there is that MG that is really well priced, a lot of vehicles are not that well priced. If you look at the more executive vehicles, like maybe you look at like let's say an Audi Jeep, an Audi Q5 or something like that, or the electric equivalent, the combustion engine vehicle will be less expensive. There is no getting past that. Having said that, you will have to pay road tax on it. It will cost you more to drive. So I think over the course of owning the vehicle, you would get your money back. In fact, you will get your money back, but the upfront cost will be more. So obviously, if you're doing it on a monthly finance agreement, it is going to be more expensive to get an electric car. If you're one of these people who's getting a vehicle from work, which a lot of us will be, or a lot of people will be moving forward, I would say that if you had the choice between them, I would get an electric vehicle. You still get to claim back mileage if it's a company electric vehicle, which is great, and that price and that percentage that you claim back from your mileage will probably pay for your charging. So essentially, it gives you a car for free, and there is still some free chargers kicking about if you know people, or if you live close to train stations, for instance, or things like that, park and rides maybe. They are something which you can still get a free charge as well. And similarly, as we go on and on, more and more chargers will become, these destination chargers will become available. When you go to people's houses, I'm sure people will have chargers installed so you can borrow their electricity as well. Although you will have to reciprocate, I'm sure, when they come to see you. But there's no getting past it. Electric vehicles are more expensive than combustion engine cars. And if it's a cash purchase that you're doing, it's hard to argue. You will get a combustion engine vehicle, particularly a used combustion engine vehicle, for less. If, however, you're thinking about getting a used electric vehicle, you can still get a grant from the government as well for a 0% loan. Now that's something worth looking into as well, because if you're doing your sums and it works out that it's a good shout to get even a year-old electric vehicle, it's something worth looking into. Check the OZEV website and you'll be able to find out exactly what grants are available there. Have a look at your interest-free loan and find out if it's something that's worth doing. Another obvious con for the electric vehicle is, without doubt, the range. So this is the hottest topic in anybody thinking about getting an electric vehicle, is the range. All the cars look great, they perform great, they last long enough, they last as long as combustion. There's no evidence to suggest they don't last as long as you want a car to last. Everything about the electric vehicle on paper is great. The last remaining elephant in the room, really, apart from the charging when you're out and about, which is getting better, the last elephant in the room of this is the range. The range is difficult because I spend my life defending the range. I say things like, you're going to get 250 miles worth of range. Where are you going? How is that not enough? 300 miles worth of range. How is that not enough? Where are you going on a day-to-day basis that isn't sufficient? However, to be honest, if you fuel your combustion engine vehicle, you fill it up to the top, it's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to cost you 100, it depends on the car, but let's say 100 quid as an example. It's going to give you 500 miles worth of range probably. I'll use my wife's car as an example. So she's got an Audi Q5 diesel, and it costs her about £130 to fill it, but it gives her 535 miles worth of range or something like that. Now that's a lot. And it means that when she fills it up with diesel, she doesn't have to probably think about it for a month, for instance. So it works out that it's not actually all that expensive. I still think it is less expensive having an electric vehicle, but it doesn't work out all that expensive, I suppose, when you look at it. And not everyone's going to have a big, massive, silly car like that. It's only because we need it for the kids. When you fill that car up, you've then got 500 miles worth of range. And you don't even think about the range. You don't think about range in a combustion engine vehicle. But for some reason, an electric car, it is the hot topic. Common sense dictates that when I leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's very unusual for me to do 250 miles before I get home. I might do 50 miles, I might do 100 miles, I might do 150 miles, but 250 miles is a lot of driving per day before I get back to my home charger to charge it up for my £4 to £7. So generally speaking, you don't have to charge your car all that often from home in particular. But there's no getting past it. When you put fuel in your combustion engine vehicle, you just forget about it, and range isn't even something you think about. So maybe peace of mind is something that you would take. It's definitely a con of the electric vehicle at the moment, until we all get used to the fact that we don't actually drive as much as we think we do. The final con that I think we should definitely talk about is towing. So towing is something which I came across when I worked at Volkswagen. And this was the idea of you're towing a caravan, if you're towing a horse box, if you're towing a trailer, something which gives drag on the back of a vehicle, something that adds additional weight. I'll be honest, it absolutely decimates the range of an electric vehicle. Now that's not to say it doesn't lower the mileage or make you use more fuel in a combustion engine car. I don't have the details for that, but I'm sure it would. You're carrying extra weight, it's creating less aerodynamics, more drag. It'll definitely affect it. But it really affects an electric car. So if you're towing something, particularly something heavy like a caravan, like a horse box, I can definitely see the argument for why an electric car isn't quite ready for you yet. They are getting better, but they need the batteries to get bigger and need the ranges to get longer, which will come with the larger batteries, in order to accommodate pulling something heavy like that. So if you're a tower, if you watch this video, something to definitely consider when you go in to buy your new car is a question that you need to ask. What will happen if I tow something that's 1,000 kilograms, 1,500 kilograms, whatever it may be? Make sure you get that question asked, because that will change your concept of buying the electric vehicle. Again, however, this goes back to the range thing about how often do you travel 250 miles? How often will you tow that caravan? How often is that happening? Is that happening? Everybody gets 4 weeks off a year, 5 weeks off a year. That's 5 times a year you're going to have to do it. When you get to where you're going, it's not likely you're going to be towing it around. You're probably going to be putting it somewhere and living in it. Or maybe you will be towing it around. It could be something that you travel in. But it's something to consider. It's something which is going to affect the range of the vehicle. And it will happen on every occasion when you do it. And it will mean you will have to stop and charge. That's what I mean. It'll probably, I don't know the exact figures, but based on what I remember, something like if you've got a car which has got 100%, 250 miles worth of range, it's probably going to whack a good 100, if not 120 off that range. So it does make a big difference. But again, 100 miles. You might get to your destination within 100 miles and you can charge when you get there. So it might not make all that much difference anyway. But definitely something to consider. Okay, so let's sum up. Okay, so in conclusion, as you know, I love electric cars. I love EV charging. I love everything about it. I'm an absolute geek for it. And you'll never get me to say you shouldn't buy an electric car. So yes, I think you should buy an electric car. I think the infrastructure now is good enough. I think the cars are certainly good enough. In fact, I think the cars are better than combustion engine vehicles in almost every way. The range is something you do need to think about. But rather than think of, oh, that time once a year when I travel to Land's End and I've got to travel 500 miles, don't think about that journey. Think about the other 320 days a year when you travel 50 miles a day, if that. That's the time when your electric vehicle is at its very best. You charge it at night time, it costs you next to nothing to charge. You toddle about, you come home, you plug it into charge, you charge your low rate of electricity, and you're ready to go the next day with a full charge again. I can't stress how lovely it is waking up fully charged and ready to go. So yes, I think you should buy one. I think 2030 is coming for us all. We can't hide from it. It doesn't look like it's going to get extended at this stage. And if you look at all car manufacturers, they're bringing out more and more electric cars, which inevitably means they're going to phase out their combustion engine vehicles. So there's going to be lots of vehicles which are going to go. In fact, even Volkswagen announced the other day they're going to start bringing out an electric vehicle which is going to be £17,000 in a couple of years' time. So that's going to be like a Polo. And again, market changer. It's an idea that the price is going to come down. Now these companies have made the big investment in changing all their factories to accommodate electric vehicles. Now they can make the cars cheaper. The ranges will be longer. The batteries will be larger. It's just going to get better and better and better. Guys, thank you again for listening to me. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed listening to me. I'm going to try and get more and more videos up as I go. I really want to enjoy doing this and get as many videos up as I can. And thank you so much for your support. Any comments you've got below of anything you're interested in EV charging, please give me a shout. I'm happy to do any videos that you've got suggestions on. I've been the EV Charge Guy. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you.